Hello, YouTube family. This is Alex here from Van Ganta House German Shepherds. Today's topic is why preservation breeders are more important than ever before and how we as breeders must cooperate with each other and help each other. The performance breeding community and the preservation breeding community are very, very necessary in today's dog market. Let me explain. In the US alone, there's a demand for 7 million dogs per year. Uh, but only 1 million out of 7 million is sold by good ethical breeders. Every dog you see, which is a high quality dog, was a breeding decision made by a breeder over several decades of breeding, which led to the dog you see in front of you. That dog you see in front of you from a high quality breeding did not happen by coincidence. It happened through planning and a lot of effort on the part of the breeder. Yet today, it is popular to bash breeders. We have a very vocal community of the Adopt Don't Shop movement, which casts all breeders as if we're evil, money hungry, and without any ethics or dog love in our hearts. And we produce dogs strictly for profit, and we are not adhering to any ethical standards. In fact, nothing can be further from the truth. The anti-dog breeder sentiment makes breeders not proud of who they are. In fact, we should be proud of who we are. Breeding matters because the ability to preserve our pure breeds matters. It took hundreds of years to develop our pure breed dogs, hundreds. In some cases, centuries. For example, the Italian Greyhound, or the Italian Mastiff, or the Borzoi. In some cases, a century. The German Shepherd, about 100 years old. The Doberman, also about 100 years old. But 100 years is a century. That's not exactly a small time frame. So if breeders stop producing pure breeds, we would have the Desi dogs of India. Those are the dogs you see in the streets, scrounging for food, and only very small dogs that can eat whatever meager food they can scrounge can survive. Gone would be purposeful breeds that can live in the Arctic or in cold conditions like the Samoyed, like the Husky. Gone would be dogs which could hunt like the pointers and retrievers. Gone would be security dogs that patrol our airports for heroin and drugs like the German Shepherd. Gone would be the military dogs in use today, which is increasingly the Belgian Malinois and Dutch Shepherd, its close cousin. So purpose-bred breeds are the mainstay of multiple facets of society. In fact, when people had rats, ratters, or terriers were very necessary because that prevented disease. So breeds were developed with purpose. And so mankind has benefited from dogs over the centuries. To have that purposeful legacy disappear overnight doesn't serve anybody's interests. And in my opinion, mankind is best served in preserving the very breeds we sought to create over time. So what has to happen for this to work? In my opinion, several things have to happen. The first that must happen is that breeders must be proud of being breeders. You see commercials for shivering cold dogs with the SPCA begging you for money. And I feel very bad for those dogs. But good breeders didn't cause those dogs. Bad breeders caused those dogs. Because those dogs were bred also simply by unethical people. Also, those dogs were caused by people who treated a dog as a toy and not as a living thing that deserves a 14 to 15-year commitment. So breeders must be more careful in screening dogs, applicants, not just give a puppy willy-nilly to just anybody who wants one. As long as you have the money, you get a puppy. In my case, I screen my buyers, and if they can't bother filling out a questionnaire, which takes them 5 minutes, then I'm not going to sell them a puppy if you can't take 5 minutes to fill out a simple questionnaire. That's the minimum you can do, and that's what your dogs deserve. So good breeders filter their buyers. Good breeders follow ethical practices of performing hip and elbow x-rays. Good breeders do genetic testing, not to breed a carrier to another carrier to cause a liver disease or some other disease like von Willebrand's disease. Now, you can't eliminate all carriers. I'm not saying that. I'm merely saying don't breed a carrier to another carrier. I'm not saying eliminate all carriers. I'm merely saying check what you're breeding. Don't breed knowingly a carrier to another carrier. That's what I'm saying. But the bashing of breeders must stop. How is it that the SPCA president can make $43 million a year, but they put these poor, helpless animals on TV to target your heartstrings, but the president of the SPCA makes such big money? So think about that. If it has a tail and has a nose, I'm for it. In fact, I adopted several animal shelter dogs multiple times in my life. Long before I became a breeder, I was always a dog lover. And if you can give a dog a home, by all means do. But it shouldn't be adopt, don't shop. It should be adopt or shop. If you want a pure breed animal for a specific purpose, or you simply want the characteristics to be known and not unknown based on size, color, and what other preferences you have, that is your right. Nobody should tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Now, in breeding dogs, you must understand one thing. Strong lines, performance lines, did not happen by accident. They were built over generations, and that took time. So what I'm explaining in this video I may be showing you example of German Shepherds, which is my breed. It applies to all breeds, in fact, and I hope other breeders or wannabe breeders who watch this video will take heed and apply what I'm showing to your situation and your dogs. Now, so the first thing we must answer is, what is a line? Before we answer what is a breed, I think a lot of people know what a breed is. It's a dog of consistent type and uniformity with a closed stud book. That's what a breed is. Now, how did various lines of dogs come about, and are we trying to preserve our lines? Well, first of all, what is a line? There are three definitions of the word line. The first definition of the word line is a male-dominated line, where a specific head of the line, usually a male dog or some outstanding individual, creates this line because he was outstanding and a good producer, and him and his sons are then used to perpetuate that line. When you say line breeding, you mean you're breeding in line to that dog. Now, if that dog appears once in your pedigree, that's not a line. For a dog to be a line, it has to be in the top and bottom of the pedigree, repeated several times. For example, he may be repeated in the third, fourth, and fifth generation. That's a line. If a famous ancestor appears only once in your pedigree, that's not a line. By definition, a line means line breeding, and that means having the same ancestor create homozygous gene pairs because he's repeated in the top and bottom of the pedigree. That is a line. Now, what is another definition of the word line? Another definition of the word line is having female and male ancestors repeated several times in the pedigree. So instead of being a male-centric line, it is a line consisting of multiple dogs, male and female, repeated several times because they were good producers, but they were bred with a certain purpose in mind. They were not just genetically related, but they were phenotypically similar and purpose similar. I'll give you an example. We have the Kirschental line, which Carl Fuller, when he was alive, he passed away, had for sheep herding and German Shepherds. Now, German Shepherds don't herd in the style of the Border Collie, which uses the eye to force the sheep into submission. German Shepherds breed in what's called the tending style. And the title for herding is called the HGH title. Now, a lot of people think German Shepherds are working dogs. German Shepherds are not working dogs. Rottweiler is a working dog. A Doberman Pinscher is a working dog. A German Shepherd is a herding dog. Name in German, Deutscher Schäferhund, German sheepdog. It is a sheepdog. It is not a working dog. People say, well, it's a working dog. No, it's not a working dog. It's a herding dog, which is a utilitarian dog that because of its intelligence can be adapted to various purposes. And work for a dog is not just bite work. Herding sheep is work. Guiding a blind person not to trip over an obstacle and be led in traffic, that is work. It's called willful disobedience, where if the dog takes the person through traffic and will get the person killed, he's trained to disobey his owner to prevent the person from being killed. That involves discernment and understanding what his purpose is in working with that blind person. That is also work. So guiding the blind is work. Herding sheep is work. Not just bite work and police work is work. So the word line can also mean a sub-gene pool within the breed, bred for a specific purpose, where they're temperamentally and phenotypically similar, but may not be very closely related. Or several ancestors are repeated, but again, they may be repeated in the past, but not up close. But they're bred for a common purpose. In that sense, the word line applies. What's an example of a line? DDR lines from the past, 1945 to 1989. That was a line of dogs. There were various lines, line 5A, line 11. I have a whole video on it. I'll put a link in the description. Now, some influencers, which are trainers, will tell you, oh, DDR, nonsense. Low drive, high nerves, high civil aggression dogs, which are blown out of proportion and therefore they're garbage. I think people are making wild statements without respecting 45 years of breeding. You can be a very good trainer. It doesn't make you a very good breeder. There are three things you must understand. You could be a good owner, you could be a good trainer, or you could be a good breeder. Making you a good trainer does not make you a good breeder. For example, if you train dogs for the sport of IGP and you're looking for the dog which has the proper temperament for that sport, you're forgetting the fact that the reason you're successful in that sport is because generations of breeders before you came along and developed dogs with those characteristics, such that now you can train using your training methodology. A lot of trainers need to stay in their lane as trainers. I see millennials, which are maybe 34, 35 years old, which may only have been toddlers in 1988, 1989, 1990, come along and comment on 45 years of breeding with a flippant comment, DDR, low drive dogs, exaggerated dogs. Come on, guys. Don't disrespect breeders which came before you. If you don't have the background or your entire background is based on a single animal which did not give you the experience you were hoping for, it doesn't mean you have to bash 45 years of worth of breeding. It is not correct that we as breeders should bash other breeders, either directly or indirectly. I think we should be better served by cooperating with each other and respecting each other and what each person and generation of dog breeders has produced. Now, I'm old enough to have been around in 1989. I was in college in 1989, so that tells you how old I am. So I remember those dogs from the former USSR and former East Germany and the former communist bloc. I remember them very vividly. And I don't draw the example of an entire line of dogs based on a single dog. One particular dog of any line may have not worked out for you. It doesn't mean the line is bad or all dogs of that series are bad. Anybody who's a trainer who batches lines, ask that trainer who trained Schutzen to go train herding a flock of sheep. They would fail because they wouldn't know how to breed for herding sheep. And they think their mastery in Schutzen means their master of German Shepherds, period. If they were asked to herd sheep with those dogs, they wouldn't know the first thing to do or how to select dogs for that purpose. So mastery in the sport of Schutzen is not mastery in all German Shepherds. And it's wrong to say that I know all about German Shepherds, I'm a master trainer, therefore my opinion is golden. No, your opinion is not golden. You're a young millennial who needs to understand that people came before you, 20 to 30 years before you, doing more in the past under difficult conditions of living under communist rule. And that is what you must understand. It wasn't a pet market creating those dogs. It was a security market and a security need creating those dogs. So people have to respect the work of others, in my humble opinion. And I leave it up to you to figure out the rest. All right, so what's the third definition of the word line? The third definition of the word line refers to a collection of dogs from a particular kennel where the dogs may not be that closely related to each other. They may be related in generally, like they're from line 2 or line 5 or line 11, but up close they're not that related. But they're related in the sense that they're bred for common characteristics. The breeder of that kennel, which may be a breed steward, developed dogs with a similar look and feel and phenotype and purpose that you know as a buyer, for example, that if you're buying a dog from the Tierhook kennel, which is a famous line, the dogs will have a certain amount of civil aggression, for example, or the Genopo line from the Pograniczne Straße. The word Pograniczne means border patrol in Czech or Russian, from the word Pogranica, or border. So now, those dogs may not be closely related, but they're bred with a specific eye by the breed warden for a specific goal. So if you're getting, or from the Kirschental line, for example, or from, let's say you have Canto Weinrau as an ancestor to your dogs. Now, he lived in the late 60s, early 70s, but he still is a famous sire. You might have a showline dog descended from Arminius or Canto Weinrau. That is a line. You may not have a dog directly connected to that ancestor, but the dogs bred by those breeders, which breed show lines, have a line. They breed dogs with certain characteristics. So to repeat, the word line means three things. It is either a male-dominated line, where a male ancestor and his sons perpetuate dogs directly related to that ancestor through the male tree of the pedigree. That is the most common meaning of the word line. The second definition of the word line is both male and female dogs repeated in the pedigree several lines. You're not looking only at a single ancestor, but a collection of ancestors, creating a tree or family of dogs that represents a line, where several ancestors may be repeated several times. That's the second definition of line. And the third definition of line is a dog of a similar type, phenotype, and behavior type that serves a particular function. For example, the Heritage Foundation for the Blind now only breeds their own dogs which serve the blind. And so that became their own line. So the word line can be understood to mean gene subpool within the breed at large. That is what a line is. It's a strain, a phenotypical behavior, phenotypical type, structure and behavior characteristics. So the best explanation of the word line is a gene subpool, and that is what a line is, which encompasses all three definitions. Now, if we want to keep our pure breeds alive, breeders must cooperate with each other to perpetuate various lines. I want to show you exactly what I mean by a series of examples. I'm going to share my screen. Please bear with me. Bear with me as I present my screen. Okay, so I hope everybody can see that. So here's some famous East German dogs. Here's a dog called Don von Rollenstach from 1979, continuation of line 5A. Now pay attention. Notice he's a classic bicolor. Notice his heavy bone construction, dark pigmentation, big head size, and this is clearly an East German dog. Here's another East German dog. You can see the raccoon type eyes. This one is a long coat. Very dark black sable. And you can tell this dog is bred with a purpose. Here's an example of another working type. Here, it is clearly a dog bred for work, bite work, maybe search and rescue. But it is not a dog for sheep herding. Here are some other famous DDR stud dogs. I'm sure you'll recognize these dogs. These are very famous dogs. Lord Griesdick, obviously here. I'm not gonna, I know you know who these dogs are. These are really famous sires. Here's a Czech dog, descended from the DDR lines. This is a dog, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right. Tam zi Pograniczne Straße. This is a very famous Czech dog. This dog was known for hardness, civil aggression, strong head type, very, very incorrigible, very fearless dog, full of honesty and heart. So you can see how heavy bone he is, and you can see how closely the DDR type and the Czech type resemble each other in this dog. Here's a dog also from a strong civil drive lineage called Tierhoek or Tiekerhoek. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Rick Van Tiekerhoek, IPO3, Schutzen 3. 2012, I believe IPO and Schutzen were renamed, if memory serves. WSV, World Champion, V1 rated, Core Class 1. In other words, the Core Meister decided he was excellent structure. This is a dog from 1983. Here's another Czech dog, DDR type. SG Zergud, Grim, Pochražané Straße, ZVV3. Now, ZVV3 in the Czech Republic, well, now it's the Czech Republic. Back then it was Czechoslovakia. This is like Schutzen 3. So instead of SCH3, telling you it's a German dog, it's instead ZVV3. IPO3, the German title. Schutzen 3, the German title. And he was the WSV winner in 1997, 1996, and an all-around outstanding dog. We used to give bone, color, head shape, very masculine head shape. So you can see here's a line of dogs. If I was to punch him up in the pedigree database, you would not see a lot of line breeding in him. But clearly you could see he's of a certain type, because breeders in Czechoslovakia and East Germany at that time bred for a certain look without necessarily line breeding. Here is a very famous man. This is Mr. Carl Fuller. He's now no longer with us, unfortunately. As you can see, you have a German Shepherd, and what do you see behind you? A flock of sheep. The Kirschental line is world famous for sheep herding ability, and the dogs have HGH titles. He passed away of September 22nd, 2022. There are some Canadian breeders and American breeders which still have his lines. Today's Kirschental lines are more like West German show types, but they all have to have herding ability, not just be show types. So that's an important distinction. He actually tests for herding ability before he breeds. So although they may look like a show line, but they have herding instinct or they don't get bred. That is what he selected for. Now here is an example of a Kirschental line. Now this dog is heavily raked. You know, the paws are pulled all the way back. If he was not in this pose, he would have a more straight back. Now this is a female, Tinky von Kirschental. So obviously it's a lighter bone animal because it's a female. But I want you to pay attention to something. Notice her structure is very light-boned, almost Malinois type, as opposed to this heavy bone type. You notice the difference? Now we go back to the past, and here the Kirschental line is a female-derived line, not a male-derived line. Here is one of the progenitors of the line, Fengel von Kirschental, HGH, that's a herding title, HLH, high-end trial, Seagrin, Seager for male, Seagrin for female, core class 1, Zumkrad, 2 times HGH champion in the 1970s. A very significant producer for the Kirschental family. Now notice her line is almost like a throwback to the dogs of the 1920s. Very, if you didn't know this was a German Shepherd, you might say this is a Malinois. Notice the legginess, the light bone structure. That's because these dogs have to be on their feet all day herding sheep, and a heavy bone dog would not work sheep well being on their feet all day. So this is a much lighter dog. Compare this herding type with this man stopper type. You see the difference in head shape and head size? So here's the same breed, but bred for a different purpose. Here's a man stopper where size, mass, and bite force are needed. Here's a sheep stopper. By the way, she was titled Schützen 3 and had intense fight drive, but she was bred for sheep herding. And so some of the dogs she created are, I'm going to read them off very quickly. Ines von Kirschental, Annie von Kirschental, Ebba von Kirschental, Viero von Kirschental, Henny von Kirschental, Heidi von Kirschental, and so forth. I'm not going to read all these names so you can see them on the screen. Bottom line is all of them have HGH titles and nearly all of them have KKL1 anatomical structure. Notice this dog, for example, BSB Bundesprogen winner, won all of Germany, FH, which is a tracking title, Schützen 3. So these dogs could compete in Schützen, but also could herd sheep. So this is closer to what the German Shepherd originally was, which was a herding type. Now we get to the show types. Of course, you can't talk about the show type without talking about Walter and Herman Martin. And the first to start off the show type is Canto Vine Vanarau in 1968. This is him. The Martin brothers, one which was a judge and one which was a breeder, in my opinion, led to the decline of the German Shepherd and the tremendous separation between the show type and the working type. These two brothers were more responsible than anybody else in detriment of the breed. In fact, I'm going to pull up an article and I want you to read it on your own. And it's on a website called angelplace.net. I'm going to bring it over to the other screen. Let me share this. Let me stop sharing and reshare it. So this article, Google it, The Martin Shepherd, written by Jim Engel in 2010. This was written 16 years ago, and it's still true today. He goes into the theory, into the exact explanation of the most famous dogs of the Arminius type and the Wienerau type and the Canto type, 1986 and 1987, Quanto van Arminius, 1992, Zam van Wienerau, 1996, Vicium van Arminius, and he goes into the politics in the breed and the big money that was being made. And I invite you to read it and judge for yourself. I feel he's right. If you're a fan of the show type, I have nothing against you. But I think that the separation of the show type from the working type was not as extreme prior to these two brothers. And I invite you to angelplace.net and USCA martinshepherd.hdm. I'm going to put a link in the description. I invite you to read it yourself and form your own opinion. Let me reshare my screen again, but go back to the PowerPoint to show you some more dogs from the show type. Bear with me. So here's Kent the Wienerau, the first dog of the show type to start the show types. Now, this is not a bad-looking dog, and it's not extreme because it's from 1967. It's just when the division started taking place. So this is VA2, Quanto van Wienerau. This dog is not extreme, but the extremeness then started slowly increasing over time. Again, not an extreme dog in terms of conformation. This is Zam van Wienerau. This is from 1987, 20 years later. Again, you don't see the overly roach back yet, but the Schutzen bite work phase was watered down, so these dogs could pass. Of course, we have 2 times VA1, Oran van Wilsterland. Notice the elongated body, much longer distance-wise length than shoulder to ground. Now, of course, he's stacked, so that exaggerates it, but still you can see the very long body. The arch of the back is starting to form. I call it a roach back or an elephant back, and you can start seeing the separation more and more as this progressed. So in short, guys, we have distinct types, but this video is not about the types, not about the Kirschental line, not about which is from Carl Fuller, not about the East or Czech line, not about the West German working line. This is a video about how breeders must cooperate for the benefit of the breed. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.